Thank you, Pragya ji, and thank you everyone on the dais. I'm really delighted to be here with all of you and to see the success of the conference that you are attending. This is really a very good initiative. I think my fellow speakers before me have made it very clear that water is clearly one of the most critical issues that we are confronted with. And as I see over the last 20 years that we've all been engaged in this issue, I see the crisis growing each year. I see the crisis growing because as economy grows, as urbanization grows, as industrialization grows, you have new and new consumers of that water. And on the other hand, we have today the changes that are happening because of climate change. We know that with climate change, the knowledge today tells us that we will get more rain in this country. There is the overall macro picture. But the disaggregated picture is that rain will come in fewer number of rainy days. Now, in a country where it rains for just about 100 hours in a year, 100 hours in a year, you're beginning now to see changes which will mean that you will get more rain in fewer number of rainy days, which means more extreme rainfall. And that is already today happening across India. When my colleagues at Down to Earth last year did a story, or this year, sorry, a few months ago, did a story on floods in India. And the big question I had was, what happened after the Baad Ayog that we had? And I think, Dr. Chadda, that was the last commission of such a kind. We had the Agriculture Commission, we had the Flood Commission, and the Flood Commission perhaps was the last such large commission that we had looking at water issues. But when we looked at the issue of floods that happened this year, and it seemed to me that the intensity and frequency of floods was increasing in the country. And I was asking why. I mean, I know we are really messing up our own ways of managing water. I know we are building in the floodplains where we should not be building. I know that we have completely mismanaged flood management by thinking of embankments rather than thinking of how to divert water, how to recharge water. So we have tried to create our solutions which have not worked. But was this the only reason? No. What we found was that over this last year, over the last 2 years, the frequency of what IMD calls extreme rain events has increased hugely. So what you're beginning to get is all the year's rainfall in a matter of 24 hours. You're beginning to see this in different parts of India. So what it does to the farmers is obviously crippling. It destroys crops. But what it does to water is that you get so much water and then you have no water to drink. So you're getting into an increasing situation, and for all of us who live in Delhi, we know that when it doesn't rain, we cry. When it rains, we cry. And that is really got to do with just how badly we are managing our own water resources. And this is only going to get exacerbated in the future. And that's what we have to remember. That we have to do everything with even greater urgency today. We have to do everything with greater sensibility today. We have to do everything in a way that there is no tomorrow. And that has to be the obsession that drives us when it comes to water. Clearly, there are three major issues when it comes to water, and I think, again, I'm only repeating what my co-panelists have said. One is obviously augmentation. Now, in this age of more variable water and rainfall, you will have to think much more smartly of how to do water, how to harvest water. And we cannot get trapped into these discourses of rainwater karna hai, ki ye karna hai, ki wo karna hai. In my view, this country has to do everything. And the more you capture rain, the more you harvest, the more you decentralize recharge, you can decentralize supply. And that's the second part of the huge debate that we must be having in this country. Because as urban areas grow, I have constantly argued, and Dr. Chadda knows this, that I have been one of the strongest supporters of groundwater in India, and have argued furiously with everybody in power that you are completely missing the picture when you call irrigation systems major and you call groundwater minor. Because actually groundwater supplies more water either for irrigation or for urban than even the canals and the dams do. So, and groundwater is all about decentralized recharge and decentralized supply. And that's the smartness of the future. If today you are holding a mobile phone, you're holding it because you have cut through the landline. If today you're thinking about a mini grid for electricity, you're thinking about it because you're saying that the grid leaks too much. It's too capital intensive. Well, that's the smart solution for the future. Think about how you can recharge water, how you can use it efficiently, how you can take your wastewater and recycle it and reuse it again. But you need to do this in a very smart way in the future. Because today most of our sewage goes untreated. And most of our sewage today, and many of you may have seen, CSE has just completed a huge piece of work with what we call shit flow diagrams. We've done shit flow diagrams of different cities of India. We all know where water comes and where water goes, but none of us know where our shit goes. And we don't even ask this. We are such a casteist society that we do not want to talk about shit, because it's somebody else's problem. It's time we talked about shit. It's time we talked about excreta, because that's what's polluting your waterways today. Today, we have no right to call Yamuna a river. It is a sewage canal. We just have not cremated it. Its biological oxygen demand is 0. It means the river is dead. Scientifically, there is nobody who can argue with me to say that the river is a river. It is dead. And it's dead because we do not understand where our city's excreta goes. We refuse to talk about it. And when we did these shit flow diagrams, we looked at where we looked at how much of a city is actually connected to an underground sewerage. And you will find, even in the most so-called richest cities like Delhi, and Keshav is not here, but he will bear me out on this, is that less than 50% of Delhi is today connected to a flush toilet, which is then connected to an underground sewerage system. Most of even Delhi is connected to decentralized, on-site collection systems. So the smart option for India would be not to think of these as backward. This is the argument we had 10 years ago when we said every well of India was not a backward part of India. We didn't have to think first of building a canal and then think that we were doing water management. A well was very much part of the water management future of India. Every attempt to do recharge using rainwater was a forward movement, not a backward movement. Yes, India was a hydraulic society in the past. When the British came, they asked, how was India able to survive when it had so little rain? We were a hydraulic society. We had learned to value every drop of water. We lost that. We became a PWD society, where all water was in the hands of government rather than communities. But to think about that was not going back, it was going forward. It's just like that when you think about off-site sewage management systems. These are not going back, these are going forward. So you think about the smartness of saying, okay, you have an off-site sewage treatment system. How can I take it? How can I treat it? How can I use that water for recharging more groundwater? Where I will draw more and more of my water supply. So it's time we didn't look at groundwater as the water of last resort. I want groundwater to be the water of first resort, because that is decentralized. By decentralizing, you cut the length of the pipeline. By cutting the length of the pipeline, you cut your distribution losses, you cut the cost of water supply, and you can make it affordable. Because that's the bottom line in India. And that's where I will end to say that the smartest solution in India will be when we can have a sustainable solution, which is also an affordable solution. Because in India, we cannot think different. So for us, smartness has to be affordability and sustainability so that we can have water for all and sanitation for all. Otherwise, we will have more and more rivers which will die, and we will be a generation which will sit back and say, how many rivers have we actually killed? Thank you very much.